A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 99.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curran and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. I'm your host, John Curran. Tommy is still out on medical leave, but we're going to bring him back for episode number 100. Today's episode, Negotiating Life on Your Terms. If you spend any time at all on social media, you'll have seen the pictures of people sitting out on the beach being served with some refreshing adult beverages, with their laptop just casually out, displaying a cascade of dollar signs. And these people are smiling and living the life in some exotic locale with their laptops, ka-ching, every time a deposit is made to their bank account. Can't you just visualize that? Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. They're drinking their drinks. They're on the beach. They get their toes in the sand. Life is awesome. This is how living life on your terms is typically presented. And it's a bunch of bunk. It really is. Here on the Swift Kick in the Ass podcast, we tell you the truth with brutal honesty that goes beyond social convention. And the scene that I just described isn't the reality at all for most people. From our perspective, a life on your terms is something we actually all do. We're already doing it. We're living life on our terms. Who else's terms would they be? The problem is that most people don't like their terms, and they don't know how to go about renegotiating them, if they can be renegotiated at all. Some of the terms we live with are non-negotiable. For instance, we can't change who our parents are, what our upbringing was, some genetic traits, and things that we didn't necessarily ask for or even have control over. Like my co-host Tommy getting diagnosed with brain cancer. He didn't ask for that. He doesn't want it. But this is something that he can't change. And when you can't change the terms, no matter how you try, the options that you have are limited. So you learn how to live with them the best that you can. It's part of the terms of your life. Some are non-negotiable. Now, this doesn't mean that trying to change the terms of your life, even though it might seem impossible to change, is totally off the table either. Miracles do happen. And what we think we know to be the truth is really just an understanding based on our current knowledge. Maybe we're right. Maybe we're not. Maybe it isn't the truth. Maybe we can beat the impossible odds. And you just never know until you try. With that being said, it's also good to put some limits on our attempts to change non-negotiable terms. It could just be a waste of time, and our time is precious. So sometimes it's better to accept the terms and move on to other terms of our life that we can change. Chances are there are more terms in our lives that we do have some real control over and that we can renegotiate to our liking. And going back to that visual of the people making their living while working from a tiki hut on the sands of Tahiti, hey, it can and it does happen. So you have to ask yourself, what do you have to lose by trying? The terms of our life are our life. They are what we have to live with day in and day out, or live without day in and day out. The terms are our conditions, situations, and the fine print of our life. They also include the price we pay for the decisions that we make, both on a daily basis as well as decisions we may have made long ago and are still paying that price. The terms can be good, bad, or even indifferent. And how we fell upon them or how we feel upon them may even change after we have that aha moment that teaches us something we would have not learned without going through that experience. That we know it was hell to go through, but it opened our eyes to something better, something more valuable than we could have ever imagined before going through it. These are eye-opening events, and once you have your eyes opened, there's no going back. When life plants a size 13 boot right on your keister, it may sting a little. It may sting a whole lot. You may wince, you may cry a little, but it does serve a purpose. And it's a sign for you to do something. It's a time for you to renegotiate. The problem is that most people think it's better to side on the devil they know than the devil they don't. Most people will not be successful at proactively creating change unless they see no other choice. And I get it. If we were happy all the time, there would be no reason to ever change. Think about that for a minute. If you're unhappy, that's your emotions telling you, hey, wake up. You need to pay attention to something. Something's not right. And it takes a lot of effort and energy trying to figure that out sometimes about what's nagging at you. What are you worrying about? What are you sad about? What are you thinking? How can things be better? But taking steps to change your life are not only difficult, or they can be difficult, they also open you up to risk. Going back to that, better siding with the devil they know than the devil they don't. It's often until you start making these changes in your life that you don't really know what you're going to open up. You could open up a whole big can of worms and it could be a lot worse. And that does scare a lot of people, even though you could open up something so much better and change your life completely for the better. So I think oftentimes we get scared of actually going after what we want, not because of what could happen, but what possibly could happen. I've said this on the show before that we tend to think in extremes. We think the best case scenario and we think the worst case scenario. But reality is really somewhere in between. Statistically speaking, it's not all that often the best case or the worst case. It's usually somewhere in the middle. And the fact is that we are not fortune tellers. We can't tell the future with 100% certainty. But we can create models based on the reality we know, and it is easier to do this than you think. Now, models, they come in all different shapes and sizes. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated. A model could be a stick figure of a person or a simple list of who you owe money. The point here is to create something, a model, that represents what you see as the reality and something that will help you know where you stand or what you're up against. It kind of paints a picture. But the better you can create a picture that represents the true reality, the better your model, the better your forecasting will be in predicting what will happen. If your model is not very deep, it doesn't contain all the various factors involved, it's probably not going to be very good, and you're going to be caught off guard quite often as you develop that model. But the more it comes together and the more you develop your model and the more you get it closer to the real picture, the better. And creating a model is going to make you really think about what you're going through and what you want to accomplish. And that is also going to play well into whether or not it works. Now, when I think back about the moment that I started to get traction on paying off a considerable amount of debt, that was several $100,000 worth. My model started off as a simple list of what I owed. And as my wife and I began to think more and more about it, about what we were up against, I started gathering more information. For instance, I began listing where our money went each month. Just really the basics, who we owed and what we owed, what the bills were, what was the total amount that we owed, the interest rate we were paying, how much interest we paid each month, and I even actually added it up to see how much I paid over the course of a year. And it was mind-blowing. And it really helped me understand what I was up against. I then wrote down how much I had coming in, and I compared what we had going out and what we had coming in. And in doing so, a big light bulb went off. And I was like, holy crap. I mean, I knew we were in the hole, but we were digging it deeper and deeper each month by several $1,000s. And we had to do something drastic. Nothing that we had done so far was working. It actually kind of dug the hole a lot deeper. And this is where I had that aha moment. And I understood why we weren't getting anywhere and why we couldn't get any traction on our plans. Because it didn't cover enough ground. It didn't really represent the reality. It was just a sliver of the reality is what I was doing before. I needed to create a total picture of what we were up against. And it wasn't until I really started with that simple list and started developing it, which took some time to do. But once I started doing that, everything started to fall into place, and we were actually able to pay off quite a bit of that debt in a period of about 2.5 years, over $100,000 worth. Actually, I really get fuzzy on these numbers because it was so long ago, but I know that we lived our life, and it was really tough there for a while, but we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, and that's what started us on this path that we're on. Now, models go beyond just financial situations. Decisions that we have to make, they can also be modeled. We can start looking at them and break them out. Now, decisions can be modeled. We can break them out based on whatever we know, and that includes the good, the bad, and the very ugly. The point here is that we need to be honest about what we're up against, as well as thinking about what we can gain and what we have to lose. It doesn't have to be about numbers. This is your reality. So describe it however you want and whatever brings meaning to you. This is part of the exercise as well, to attach meaning to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, and know what you're trying to accomplish. It can be done with smoking cigarettes. It can be done with losing weight or getting in better shape. It can be about making a decision to move across the country or not, or to move across town into a better neighborhood for your kids. It can be anything. But be honest and be descriptive and know what you want. And take it from me, I know how painful this change can be. It's painful, but it's even more painful to feel helpless and out of control. And modeling, even when you discover how big that hole that you're in or what you're up against is so mammoth that it's it may feel like it's going to be a little bit disheartening, and it will be probably, but it can also help you create a feeling of control. For once, you'll know what you're up against, and you're not just operating in the dark. And you're going to use this as a tool that's going to help you figure out how to best change your reality. Right now, we're not really looking at how to do it. We're looking at why we're doing it and what we're up against. And once you start taking that first step, no matter how small, no matter how simple your list is, you're going to start feeling better because you're taking a step to gain control. And depending on how big your problem is, it can take some time. And there's not necessarily an overnight solution. But it's going to help you develop a game plan. And modeling is a learning experience. So don't be surprised if your model isn't working. Figure out why it's not working. What is it not representing in your reality? That's why I'm saying be honest with yourself and be open with yourself about the reality you face and try to describe that. And, I think going through this process myself, I recognize that life had been giving me a lot of signals all along, but I simply chose to overlook them or ignore them. Some things came along without warning. Those also sting. Maybe you're an innocent bystander caught up in the terms that have been handed to you, and you have no way to control them and no way to change the terms. Sometimes we need to just face our situation and accept it for better or for worse. That's life. We're not going to be able to control all aspects of our life. We shouldn't expect to. But we need to accept what we can't change and stop wasting time and energy on it. It's not going to get you anywhere. Focus on what you can change. Shift your energy into trying to manage and control what you can change. You're going to have to think, and you're going to have to take action. It may be very difficult, but once you start doing it, little by little, you will gain more confidence in yourself, and you will get traction that is unbelievable. And it will start to snowball and take a life of its own. And it could even get to be a lot of fun once you get out of it. And I'm telling you, man, it's a great feeling when that starts to happen. When you get it right and you start getting it right, it's tremendous. If you start figuring that you're going down the wrong path, hey, you know what? That's okay. At least you're trying, and you're better off by trying rather than just letting life control it for you. These are your terms, and you can renegotiate or just settle. That's your choice. And I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. Well, that's not really true. I'm trying to renegotiate. No, that's not really true. I am telling you, renegotiate the terms of your life that you're not happy with if there are things that you can change, and let go of what you can't change. And if it's not worth it to you, if you think you can just live with it, you might need to settle. That might be a good choice for you. So now that you're sitting at this negotiation table with life, you're going to start to see how you can renegotiate your terms. I think that once you start down this path, how to do it will start coming into your mind. And you'll start developing a game plan. So I'd like to leave you with a few points that I think will help you in your negotiation. Before you sit down to negotiate, remember that life is an excellent negotiator. And life is known to get what it wants out of you. So life knows all the tricks in the book, and it's going to hold you accountable. This is not something you can cheat or renege on your agreements or think that a system that worked for somebody else is going to work exactly the same for you. Everyone is different. And there is a price to pay in how you approach renegotiating the terms of your life. There's a price to pay with almost everything that we do. It's good to think about not only what you're getting, but also what you're giving up. And there's an opportunity cost as well, which basically means if I do this, that means I'm not going to be able to do that. We need to think about things like this. So know what you want and know what it is that you're bringing to the table. Sometimes we just have this pressing feeling that something is wrong, but we can't really put our finger on it. My suggestion is really dig deep and figure out what's bothering you and what's driving that feeling. Our emotions are a tool, and they can be very helpful in helping guide us down the right path. But we have to be willing to learn and how to use the tool. So know what you have to do, but don't be too concerned about the how right now. If you want something bad enough, you're going to figure out the how. And this is also part of the exercise, is that when you figure out what you want and why you want it, you will be more emotionally driven to getting it done. And you will hopefully get yourself to a point to where, hey, you know what? If I want this, I've got to do this. And I've got to do it now, because no one else is going to change it for me. Be realistic. Have a good grasp on what it is within your control and what is not in your control. Again, let it go. If you can't change it, don't worry about it. Deal with it. Live with it. You can't control it. It's just wasted time trying to change things that are beyond your control. Don't be afraid to hold your ground on things that you feel are important. And know that there are prices attached to these things. And you're going to have to be willing to pay up. If you feel that it's so important, you better be willing to pay for it. And I guess that's what holds a lot of people back, is that they want to do something, but what holds them back is that they're not so willing to pay the price. And that's okay. Know what you're willing to pay and don't go over that price. Don't don't overpay. And I'm not really talking about just money. There's a price that we pay for our decisions. I thought about going into law at one time. And the more because that's a good earning profession, can make lots of money, and I like to study, I like to learn. I thought I'd be a good fit. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how that was going to take me away from my ultimate goal, which was to spend more time with my family. And it really wasn't going to give me what I wanted. But if I didn't think about it and I just blindly went into it, I think a lot of us will just blindly go into things because we don't know what the price is. We don't ever give it a second thought about the price that we're going to pay as we go down that path. And sometimes you get down that path and it's a little bit too late to turn around. So you just keep on going and you live with it until such a time that you find a way out. So don't be afraid to walk away from the table without a deal. And because there's times to settle, and then there's times to not. And there are times where you're going to want to hold your ground. And this is your life. You're going to be paying the price, and you're going to be living it with the consequences of your decision. And that's that. This can be a win-win situation if you play it right. But again, you have to know what you're up against, and you have to know what you're willing to pay and what you can live with. Negotiate on the basis of what you will do. Try to stay away from focusing on what you won't or can't do. Because again, if you won't do it or you can't do it, that's something that you can't change. And I kind of ask that as a question because some things we say we won't do or we can't do, and it's a choice. Something we choose not to do. It's not that we can't do it or won't do it. It's we choose not to do it. And that's cool. That's fine. But it's a waste of time if that's the way it is. Focus on what you will do and what you can do. That's a better use of time and will get you farther and get you more traction. Negotiation is a game of give and take, push and pull. So be honest with yourself that, this can be struggle. You might have to give up some things to get what you want, and you have to weigh whether or not it's worth it. But in the end, if you're honest with yourself and you know what you want and you're willing to pay the price, I say go for it. Now, this is your life. There's no one formula for success. And there's no formula or system that works for everyone with 100% guaranteed success. A lot of this is going to be trial and error. So don't get down on yourself for trying something that doesn't work. Keep trying. Keep trying to figure it out. Keep bringing life back to the negotiation table and work out a deal that's a win-win. Life is really full of risks and rewards, and some are going to pay off and some won't. And what works for one person may or may not work for you. But don't ever try stopping to try to renegotiate in an attempt to get better terms. It's worth the effort, and you are the only one who's going to be sitting at that table and negotiating in your favor. You've got to look out for you and your family and people that you love and care for, and it's your life. So keep negotiating and keep trying to better your life. This is John Curran, and that's it for this episode. Until next time, keep kicking ass. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass, and that today's topic inspires you to get your ass moving and living on your terms. Please take a moment to rank this episode on iTunes or wherever you get this podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Visit our website at aswiftkickintheass.com. Have a great day.